Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really fascinating ancient story, one that's all about two totally different kinds of power. On one hand, you've got this statesman who saves an entire nation, but basically enslaves it in the process. And on the other, you have a patriarch, a father, who changes the future with just a single really defiant gesture.
And our story really kicks off with this just incredibly moving quote. It's from an old man, Jacob, and he's standing in front of Pharaoh, the most powerful man on the planet at the time. And what he says, it just perfectly sets the scene for this incredible story of endings and also of new beginnings. So we're going to break this down into two parts. First, we'll see how one man's grand plan saved a whole country from starving, but man, it came at a huge cost. Then, in the second half, we're going to zoom in on a dying father whose surprising last act would literally map out the future for his people for generations.
All right, so let's set the scene. Egypt is in the middle of an absolute crisis. A devastating famine has a chokehold on the entire region. And the text is super blunt about it. It says, there was no bread in all the land. Think about that. This isn't just, a food shortage. We're talking about a total societal collapse. The people have nothing to eat, and honestly, no hope left.
So, right in the middle of all this chaos, you have Joseph. He's Pharaoh's right-hand man, the second most powerful guy in Egypt. And what's his first move? Well, he makes sure his own family is safe. He settles them in this place called Goshen. It's like the best, most fertile land around, so they're totally protected from the famine. Okay, family's secure, now Joseph can turn his attention to the rest of the country.
Now things are getting bad for everyone else. The people have run out of money. They're totally broke. So they go to Joseph, and they're desperate. They're basically begging, why should we die right here in front of you? Our money's gone. And this is where Joseph rolls out his plan. And let me tell you, this isn't just some short-term food program. It's a multi-stage plan that's going to completely change Egyptian society forever.
Okay, so let's really get into this plan. It's incredibly systematic. Step 1, Joseph collects all the money for grain. Simple enough. But then, the money's all gone. So step 2, he takes their livestock, their ability to work the land and make a living. And finally, when the people have absolutely nothing left to give, they offer the only two things they have left, their land and themselves.
And this right here is the key. You have to understand, this was never just about handing out food. This was a power play, a complete consolidation of control under Pharaoh. And get this, the people themselves are so desperate, they're the ones who suggest the final step. They say, buy us and our land for bread. We'll be Pharaoh's servants. And Joseph, he says, deal.
So the famine is dealt with, but now Pharaoh owns pretty much everything. And Joseph makes it official. He sets up a permanent law. From now on, 1/5 of everything you grow, that's 20%, goes directly to Pharaoh. Just like that, this flat tax becomes the cornerstone of the brand new Egyptian economy.
What you end up with is just a wild contrast. A country with two completely different realities living side by side. You have the native Egyptians, who are now basically serfs. They're working land that isn't even theirs anymore. And then you have the Israelites, Joseph's family, over in Goshen, and they are thriving. They're getting wealthy, their families are exploding in size, they're doing great. It's the same crisis, the same country, but two totally different outcomes.
All right, let's fast forward a bit. 17 years go by. That crazy famine that changed everything, it's pretty much ancient history now. And the spotlight of our story starts to shift. We move away from Joseph the statesman, and we focus on his father, Jacob. Jacob's now 147 years old, and he knows his time is short. He's not worried about day-to-day survival in Egypt anymore. His mind is on his legacy and on the homeland he had to leave behind. So he calls for Joseph, his powerful son, and he has this one last really urgent request. He says, look, do not bury me here. Don't let me be buried in Egypt. He wants to be laid to rest with his fathers. And he makes Joseph swear a solemn oath, a serious, binding promise to take his body back to the family burial plot in Canaan.
And now, the story gets really personal. We're moving away from the big national stage and we're zooming right into a quiet room at Jacob's bedside. This is probably the most intimate and honestly the most dramatic part of the whole story. Jacob is old, he's frail, his eyesight is failing, and he's getting ready to pass on the family blessing to Joseph's two sons.
And you gotta understand, this isn't just a sweet, bless you, my grandsons kind of moment. No way. This is a huge deal. This act is going to set the hierarchy, the pecking order for the future tribes of Israel. So Joseph brings in his boys, Manasseh, who's the older one, and Ephraim, the younger, ready for the traditional blessing.
So Joseph does everything by the book. He knows the protocol. The right hand gives the bigger, more important blessing. So he places his firstborn son, Manasseh, right by Jacob's right hand, so he can receive the honor that's rightfully his as the firstborn.
But then something totally unexpected happens. In a move that must have been shocking to watch, Jacob deliberately crosses his arms. He can barely see, remember, but he intentionally guides his right hand, the hand with all the power, onto the head of Ephraim, the younger son. In one single move, he just throws centuries of tradition and expectation right out the window.
Well, Joseph sees this, and he's not happy. He tries to correct his dad, saying, "No, father, not like that. This is the firstborn." But Jacob just won't move his hands. He reveals it was no accident. He says, "I know, my son, I know." And then he predicts a future where the younger brother will actually become greater than the older one. This isn't an old man's confusion. This is prophecy, plain and simple.
So, there you have it. You've got these two powerful competing legacies, right? You have Joseph, the ultimate statesman who completely remade a kingdom, and then you have Jacob, the patriarch with a vision who redefined the future of his entire people. Let's put them side by side and see what we can learn. So on one side, you've got Joseph's legacy. It's all about temporal power. It's political, it's economic, you can touch it. He saved millions of lives for sure, but he also funneled all power to Pharaoh and turned the population into servants. Then you have Jacob's legacy. His is a spiritual power. With a simple crossing of his hands, he shapes the very identity and destiny of his descendants, prophesying that they'll become a multitude of nations.
At the end of the day, Joseph's policies, as brilliant as they were, reshaped Egypt for a while. But Jacob's blessing? That defined a people for thousands of years. And that leaves us with a really big question, one that echoes through history. Which kind of power actually endures? The kind that builds a kingdom, or the kind that shapes a people?